Okay, ready to go? Good evening. It's 6 p.m. It is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. We're convening a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Cuyahoga Heights Schools. Mr. Muccio, would you call the order or call the roll, please?
Ms. Prowse.
Here.
Mrs. Schuker.
Here.
Mr. Suchaki.
Here.
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Mr. Dobbins.
Here, 5 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public comments portion of the meeting. Please identify yourself on the board sign-in sheet. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available to review on our district's website. Would you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve, let's see. Well, yeah, may I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please?
So moved.
Ms. Schuker moves.
Second.
Mr. Suchaki seconds. Any discussion or changes? Okay, let's move to a vote then, please.
Mrs. Schuker.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye, the motion passes 5-0. Next up is presentations. I'll turn it over to Mr. Evans.
Well, and Mr. Dantovich isn't here, so I'm not going to steal his thunder on this, but I do want to update the board on a couple other items. Two educational issues items that we just kicked off in the last 2 weeks. Last week, Mr. Dantovich had a meeting, and I think we probably had about a dozen teachers and probably about another dozen that are interested for our professional learning communities, our PLC communities. Real excited about getting some collaborative work with our teachers across district. Mr. Dantovich is going to lead that initiative. And then this Monday, Joy kicked off a literacy team meeting and had great attendance at the literacy team meeting. And so these two initiatives are probably long overdue for us with COVID and everything else that's going on. But as Mr. Young and I talk, we just think that the district right now is as we come out of COVID, is at a place where we've got some incredible talent in this district, teacher-wise. And we're going to be able to get them together in a collaborative way and start working on initiatives to move us forward. We think that we're in a good place here. We think we can get to great in a relatively short time. And we're going to pull some of these teachers together. It's exciting to see that kind of teaching talent in the room with those kind of ideas being bounced off each other. And it's really, we're in a great place for that, and I'm excited about what that can do for us as a district. And Mr. Dantovich, again, is going to handle the professional learning communities part of that, and Joy's going to handle the literacy team part of that. But I would say on either committee, well over half of our staff is involved in one or the other, and I got to believe that as they start getting going, more people will want to be. And I think this is going to be one of those things where people are not going to want to be left on the dock. They're going to jump off the dock, get on the boat as we're going with this stuff. So very exciting from that end. On the GPD end, Matt and I met with GPD last week. One of the first things we told them is, we had a little sticker shock from the alarm system, in that we were not going to go ahead with the replacement alarm system right now because that would completely deplete our 300 fund right now. But we did want them to go ahead with the schematic drawings. We know that we're going to need those drawings to move forward with any kind of plans with that. So that was part one that we talked to them about. Part two that we talked to them about was that they would oversee the roofing project that was going to take place this summer. So that they're crafting a contract for that. They will be kind of our liaison between the air conditioning project this summer. So they'll be our liaison between the air conditioning group, Gardner, and us as that kicks off this summer. Tremco has been our consultant on the roofing. They will stay in place, and they will consult with them on the roofing project over the cafeteria. But we've also asked for some structural things from GPD as we move forward. And we also asked, with the air conditioning project taking place in elementary, we're going to start the process of updating that capital improvement plan that we had in place 2 years ago when COVID struck. As a matter of fact, Matt looked back and it was almost 2 years to the day that we had the best meeting where we were going over that draft plan. So we were kind of backing up to that draft plan, make the adjustments in that with the air conditioning. We talked to them at great length. We'll be meeting with them on an ongoing basis and get that draft plan in place so then we can then kick the best committee back in those discussions and start taking a look at what that dollar figure looks like. Matt did one of his famous spreadsheets and shot it down to me, the wants and needs, and I spent the better part of the day ranking stuff 1 to 5 on some of those priority lists. So we're gonna use that as kind of a guide to get us going. We also asked GPD to put us in touch with some structural engineers. We know we got that crack on the 3rd floor upstairs. We wanna make sure that crack is not the result of the hill sliding out back here. If we're gonna go into any kind of capital improvement plan, we have to know that the hill behind us is solidified as we do that.
Is this a new crack? Or is
This-
this the
this-
one we talked about with the band?
No, the
area?
band crack is fixed.
Yeah.
There's a crack on the 3rd floor. And previously they had looked at, and they said that crack fell in line with some of the beam work, and they thought that was just maybe a shift of the building. They didn't think that was, we wanted to look a little bit deeper into that. I want some more answers, and I really specifically want to know about the hill out back. The stadium was put in the late 1940s, early 1950s. They put that concrete in, those concrete bleachers in. We know there's been some washout just from water underneath there. So we're gonna take a look at some things because it doesn't do us a lot of good to start fixing things in the building if the building's sliding towards the hill. So I didn't know any other way to say that than to say it that way. And we also need the geological firm to take a look and see where we can put a scoreboard. We've renovated the athletic facility. The last thing part of that is the scoreboard. The problem with that is those of us that are old timers here know that the scoreboard used to be behind the visitor's bench. When we went to a metric track, it pushed the track out, so the old footers for that scoreboard are actually underneath the track. So we would have to be beyond that, which is now hillside over there. We don't know if that's stable enough. That hill, again, stability, we know that is to put a scoreboard in there. The current scoreboard sits down at the south end of the track. There's some issues even getting to that because it's built into the hill there, and because our track is a soft pour, so it would be hard to get the equipment we would need to get to that place to put a scoreboard there without doing damage to the track. And you can't come in from the side because that hill is sloped too steep. And the third place we looked at was on the north end. There's an area off to the side of where the high jump pit was that would actually be inside the track, much the same way Solon has their scoreboard. We were over there for a playoff game, and I think it would kind of fit the same way, but we could put a scoreboard in there. So I've got the weight, a couple different weights of what a scoreboard might weigh, but GPD is going to assist us with that as well. So we got a lot on GPD's plate. Mark and Jason, I thought it was a good meeting. I don't know how you felt about it, man, but I thought we came out of there feeling pretty good, and we're starting to get some things going. We did get some testing back on the ancillary gym. So we'll start cleaning, we got one bid on that, we'll get a couple more bids, we gotta clean up that ancillary gym and some of the mold problems. The first evaluation that we got said it was an airflow issue, so we sent that to the insurance company. They originally turned it down the first time. We sent it back to say, listen, we've got a company that will say here that this is because there's not enough airflow in there, that's not our, that should be insurance claim, so we'll take another crack at seeing if we can get the insurance to pick up what we're gonna have to do up there. So we're in the process of working on that right now. A lot of summer projects. At the April board meeting, I'll go through a whole list of summer projects that we've got on board. We're already right now starting to call those people on a regular basis to say, we want you in here the first week after students get out and start working the roofs. We already have kind of talked to the principals that whatever summer planning we do with students during the building, we're gonna have to kind of stay away from that area there, and then obviously the second floor of the elementary building, because the air conditioning is gonna be going in. So we still can run our student programs, but we might have to relocate some this summer to do that. So a lot going on, a lot of good things going on. Just coming off maybe one of the more successful winter sports seasons in a long time. Great run by the boys basketball team, good run by the girls basketball team. A girl bowler in the top 20 in the state, wrestler at the state meet this week. All of our swimmers swam personal best at the district swim meet. I don't know how much more we could ask for on that end of it, so a lot of really, really great things happening.
Gymnasts too, that meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, gymnasts, but Hannah Trusso got to districts and had some of her best scores of the year, so a lot of things, and a lot of underclassmen in that list too. So Luke's going down to Columbus on Friday for the state wrestling tournament, wrestled his tail off over Garfield Heights. I got my voice back about Tuesday morning, so much to your dismay, I'm sure, but a lot of really, and now with spring sports started, I was telling Jordan today, the girl that was here interviewing, that we have 80 kids out for track. She watched the softball team walk by. There had to be 40 kids on the softball team. There's 40 kids on the baseball team, and there's 40 kids on the play. There's only 320 kids in a high school building. That's about 200 kids that we just accounted for involved in any one of 4 activities right now. So we're busy, and that's good. That's a good busy. So that's it on the little wrap up there.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation. I'd be interested for updates on the literacy committee project.
Yeah, as that stuff gets up and running,
Great.
that'll be a presentation, but kind of before we head out for summer. I'll
Good.
have both groups to say, here's what it looks like, here's what the plan is, here's where we're going with it.
Great. Okay, thank you. I don't see any commenters on our sign-in sheet, nor do I see anybody in the audience, so let's move on to agenda item 5, Treasurer's Business. Mr. Muccio.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbins. Just a couple items tonight for approval. First, item 5A, motion to approve the minutes of the February 23rd, 2022 regular meeting is found in attachment T1. Item 6A, motion to approve new vendors to the school district per W-9s attached as found in attachment T2. And item 6B, motion to approve purchase orders over $5,000 is found in attachment T3. I ask for those motions for approval tonight.
Okay, so may I have a motion for approval of the treasurer's consent agenda items? So moved. Mr. Suchaki moves.
Second.
Mrs. Eder seconds. Any discussion?
For the W-9s attached, nothing out of the ordinary, but I did want to point out from our lead sheet that we have there, the 2 items. One is for professional development from our Title I funds, grant funds. The second's the greenhouse, so that's Bootstrap Farmer, and that's a new vendor that we're adding to the school district. So this is the CVCC reimbursement grant that we have, of approximately $30,000, and in that, about $1,500 is for the greenhouse that the students are looking to purchase and build, set up, I should say, outside. So I know that's kind of exciting that we have going.
Is that going on campus here?
Yeah, we're looking at down next to the baseball field. There's an area we've got water down there. We know we have power down. It's a 20 by 30. The geometry class, they broke into teams and worked on different designs. And they actually called me in and we talked about some of the different pros and cons of the different designs. And they worked with Dr. Freed's class about other things that you have to do. They got a couple parents involved in the construction business about what we need to do to put for a base of the greenhouse. So this has all been kind of student driven. It's exciting, so they've been excited about it. It's been kind of fun watching work through some of these issues. So.
Second item is the purchase orders over $5,000. We just have one, and as Mr. Evans was talking about, this is with GPD Group. This is for their generation of computer-aided design CAD plans of the schools to be used in future capital improvement projects, and that amount is $5,500 for those designs. And those are the 2 items I have for recommendations.
Mr. Evans, we've talked previously, but it's my understanding that these CAD prints essentially would be readily edible to reflect changes and improvements literally as we make improvements.
Absolutely. They'll be, and again, because they're CAD, they're computer-assisted drawings, aided drawings that will be able to, as we update the capital improvement plan, they'll be able to be reflected. And we need those drawings because we need to know where our electronic resources are, our water, sewer, and those will have that as a baseline. The CAD drawings are done in layers. And the beautiful thing about being able to do them now, so they can have it with all the utilities on them, or none of the utilities, and also have structural things on there too that we know that we need, and it's done to scale, so we know what sizes we're working with. So, for instance, if we're going to calculate the HVAC requirements for the west side of the building over here with those classrooms, we can just click on the classrooms and it'll tell us how many square foot that we're trying to, or how many cubic foot that we're looking to heat or cool on that part of it. So there's a lot of that poured into the CAD drawing. So that's one of those things, that replaces those volumes and volumes of drawings that we every time Jim Zerbola cleans the office, he finds another boxes of drawing downstairs. But yes, I think at one point in time there were 3 different sets of pool drawings that, and not knowing which one might have been the final set, but trying to find. I think when we were looking for the piping underneath. I think all told there was 3 different sets of drawings that they came up with, and not really sure which one was the most accurate one. So,
Well, this would be a big improvement. Thank you. Is there any other discussion, Mr. Muccio? Okay, well then we can move to a vote, please.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mr. Schukert?
Aye.
And Mr. Donis?
Aye, the motion passes 5-0. Mr. Muccio, any of your treasurer's discussion items?
Yep, just have a couple items for discussion. The first one is 8A. So I like to do this little activity where we review the school districts on the ballot just to kind of compare where they're going with their 5-year forecast. If we look, and again, it's my hope that this comparison will provide us more guidance on our 5-year forecast regarding any possible levies. We look at the first attachment, which is May 3rd, 2022 ballot issues. We open that, we see there's just one school on there, and it's North Olmsted City Schools, and they have 2 issues that they're going for. Their first issue is a bond issue, and their second issue is a operating levy for the general fund. So if we look at the first issue, the bond issue, it's a $58 million bond issue over 37 years, and it's at 2.8 mils that they have. So if we open the third attachment I have there, which is tax year 20 revenue per mil, and that's in Excel, and I already looked this up, but North Olmsted, and if you remember, our amount per mil back in tax year 2020 is about 400,000, 395,000. The value of a mill changes, we know that each year. For North Olmsted, their value, if we were to search, is $850,000 on there. So that's the value of 1 mil, revenue per 1 mil back in tax year 2020. So if we use that calculation going forward, if we look at 850,000 multiplied by 2.8, which is the mills that they're looking at, we get 2,380,000. And then we multiply by 37 years, because that's for 1 year, we get $88 million roughly. So the entire amount of 37 years at 2.8 mils, approximately for North Olmsted Schools, is $88 million. Now, if we look at how it's written on here, it says $58 million for the principal. That means approximately $30 million in interest is there. So, just wanted to point out the amount of interest that's laid on top of a bond issue that's out there. So when they pass this levy, in order to pay for that, they're putting the principal out for everyone to see. The interest is kind of not necessarily, written in there. So the county has to pay both the interest and the principal, and the school district's the one that has to pass the tax resolution on the ballot in order to pay that. So $30 million of that $58 million principal amount is going to interest there. So just giving us some perspective as we look at bond issues that are out there. And that's a lot for bonds, just given to the banks. So, yep.
I appreciate that perspective. Would it be right to state then that essentially the taxpayers would be paying almost $1 million a year of interest expense? Essentially $30 million over 37 years is somewhat close to $1 million a year.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Their second issue,
You've already got a bond issue too. They passed a bond issue to build a new high school, so that bond issue's not even happened after the fire, so we're 10, 12 years old.
Are they another district that didn't get a whole lot of funding to replace buildings and things like
Correct.
that?
They got a little bit, they didn't get, and this is for their elementary buildings. They originally had 6 elementary buildings. I think they're down to 4. I think this bond issue would take them down to 2 elementary buildings.
And the second issue we see is a operating expense, so that's general fund levy, and that's for 5 mills, and they have it on for continuing. So again, if we kind of look at the 850,000 is the amount of revenue coming in tax year 2020 for 1 mil, 850,000 times 5 gives us 4,250,000, so 4.2 million. If we look at their 5-year forecast, which is the second attachment, and I'm not really a fan of how ODE, their software updated the 5-year forecast. You can't print them out in one nice sheet anymore. So I have to print it out in these 3 combined sheets. The first one's the revenue, the second one's the expenses, but it's the third one, which has everything totaled up, and I have some highlights on that third one. I just wanted to point out, if everybody looks at the third page of their 5-year forecast, we can see that line 6.010 is their either surplus or deficit, and they have a deficit 2019 of about 2.4 million, deficit in 2020 of about 500,000, and deficit in 2021 of about 500,000 as well. They're forecasted this year, fiscal '22, to have a $5.8 million deficit, and then deficits all the way throughout fiscal '26 in their forecast. Their bottom line, they're in the negative on their forecast in fiscal '24, $1.4 million almost. Then it balloons up to 11.6 and 24.2 that they have in place. So this $4.2 million general operating levy is only going to get them by if, the forecast is semi-correct, only so long. So they're going to have to go on for another general fund levy, pretty large, in 2-3 years just to sustain. So this is a lot that they have out there. It's something for us to just kind of, take in, because we know with our TPP phase out, that's going to accelerate the need for, maybe a second levy coming down, because we're losing that, foothold, not only for a normal levy, just for all the expenses that we have, but that phase out. So kind of viewing North Olmsted and how they go about may give us some perspective on that as we go forward. So. The second item I have is to piggyback on what Mr. Evans was talking about for capital improvements. And it is kind of funny too, and I'll pass this out. We had a timeline in place 2 years ago, almost to the day, when we kind of froze it, is where we're picking up with it right now. So in March of 2020 is when COVID hit, and we were in between going to the villages to discuss our capital improvement projects. And I remember us going to, I believe it was Cuyahoga Heights and Brooklyn Heights, but we did not go to Valley View. That was the one that was in between when COVID hit, and we paused everything. So we can see the different phases in blue. Number one is phase number one, the wants and needs. And if we remember, we had that great meeting with Jim Zwisler, who facilitated, and we prioritized all of those items at the different tables and had the giant charts in place. It was a great meeting. Number two is our community reviewing of everything that we had in place. Again, 11, 12, 13, we're going to the villages and discussing with them our capital improvement project timeline that we had. Number three was really looking at what a levy would look like to calculate and have an idea of how we were going to structure it. I think if everybody remembers, we had Enos Britton come out, and we had GPD's legal counsel, Galen Sherline, from Retzel and Andrews, come out as well and just give us some direction on the difference between a bond issue and a permanent improvement levy. When we paused it, I'm kind of looking at this and I'm saying, I'd like to get the green light, with the board to kind of pick up where we left off. We just took a 2-year, pause and carry on our timeline for what we had, and maybe it leads us, to a levy in November. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe next year. Who knows? But I'd like to kind of pick up where we left off now that COVID, knock on wood, is hopefully in the rear view mirror for all of us, and see where this goes. We're gonna have to discuss with the finance committee and obviously with the board and everybody. But we're picking up this timeline. I'm gonna have to kind of work some magic on it with the times in place, but let's see where it leads us as we go through it, as we discuss it.
I think November might be a bit ambitious. But
Could be. Yes.
It's kind of sad to look at this, though.
It's crazy.
We
when you
were
think
like
about
kicking butt. Like,
Yeah,
we were
it was
really
crazy.
in a good place.
It was
It's
just
2
rolling
years.
so
It's weird to see this just.
so frustrating to look back to know all the work that
it. A lot of work.
kind of
Stalled, just.
yeah.
Yeah. And on the public content, as Mr. Evans was pointing out, 2:25, we had our meeting with Mark and Jason, and then we have Mr. Evans, myself, we have a meeting scheduled for 3:14 to really get in place and start prioritizing, another spreadsheet that we have that we'll share with everybody here as we, work on the green section, the levy discussion, just on, what potentially an amount would look like, how we structure those projects, how we prioritize, and we'll have to bring that, copy once we have a good draft of it to the board and start really editing it in front, for everybody here. But we're hitting the ground on that running, and the third one, to be determined, Finance Committee meeting, I know we're looking for that in the future that we have as well.
These have to be redone too, because we're
Yeah.
gonna still need to go out to the
Yep.
communities, we're gonna
Yep.
need to
Yeah.
share the staff.
Big key was we had such great community buy-in with, I mean, that cafeteria was
Yeah.
full that night we did the breakout,
Yeah.
and we just had such, from a lot of different areas and a lot of different interests, that I think we need to get back to that point where we get that kind of audience downstairs in a constructive, positive way to take a look at these items with price tags on them and to say, how does that all shake out, and then what does that look like on the ballot for everybody? That was huge for us, that we lost that part of the momentum at that point in time. There's a lot of that groundwork of the plan stays, but all those people that were part of those meetings is just such a good mix across the board with a lot of different interests from people,
It
so.
was so positive too.
Yeah,
like it's-
really, it really
to have
was.
That many people from different areas and different
Yep.
stakeholders together, like,
That was one of the funnest meetings, I'll have to say, that I've been a part of. Just, Jim Whistler, did a great job, facilitating. And again, as Mr. Evans and everybody here is pointing out, the community positive, opinions that everybody had sitting at those work groups, was just great. So maybe we do something like that, now, 2 years from that, to pick it up. It's kind of crazy to think that 2 years ago, before COVID, and then, where we're at now, so. Crazy how time flies. And then the last item I have tonight, just wanted to say I'm looking forward to Friday, which I volunteered to go with the art club to the art museum. So I actually used to work at the art museum when I was in college. I was one of the people standing in the galleries with my little blazer telling them not to touch the Picassos. or Van
That's very on brand, I just
Yeah.
have to say.
You'd be surprised, people just walk up and you're like, what? But, yeah, so.
Please don't put your fingers on the Monet.
Yeah. But that's going to be a fun time. We have a couple teachers going, and that's Friday evening. So hopefully the snow is not going to hit too hard, and looking forward to that. It's always fun going to the art museum. So
Good.
that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you for sharing
Thank you
that.
very much. Agenda item number 9, Mr. Evans, Superintendent's please.
Okay, motion to approve a $500 stipend to administrative assistant to the superintendent assistant, Tracy Deal, and school nurse Sarah Hart for their work above and beyond their normal job responsibilities with the county health department in conducting contact tracing, district notifications, arranging for vaccination clinics, family contacts, and other responsibilities related to COVID. B, motion to approve the 2022-23 calendar as submitted. C, motion to approve the employment of Don Schwarzer as a custodian on a limited contract for the remainder of 2021-22 school year, effective per the adopted salary schedule for custodian 3, step 6, prorated contingent upon successful completion of FBI, BCI background checks. D, coming up here. Motion to approve settlement agreement release between Cuyahoga Heights Board of Education and Jamise Jones as attached. E, motion to approve rental contract agreement between Cuyahoga Heights Schools and the customer for costume rental for the 2022 school musical, The Sound of Music, for the attached agreement. And F, motion to approve Darius Gibson to receive a stipend $50 per day, up to a total of 10 days to train the new Chase employee. I ask those items be approved.
Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda items?
so moved.
Ms. Schukert moves. I'll second. Any discussion, Mr. Evans?
Just, we've previously talked about the stipend, the school calendar, a little different next year. We're gonna use that Monday and Tuesday, they'll be off, the students will be off the entire week of Thanksgiving. Staff will be in Monday and Tuesday for professional development. With that, we're gonna break a little bit later for Christmas. So we'll be in session till the 22nd to the 23rd to be a teacher's work day, records day, and then we'll be actually off to the 6th, because with being off that entire week of Thanksgiving, I thought we could push the Christmas break back a little bit. But I will tell you, in the future, I'm gonna do calendars during the summer. Just to guess, because everything that goes into the calendar with the, elementary's on trimesters, high school's on, and all the add-ons for it, it tends to be, we got down to the 11th hour, and I don't like to work that way, but one of the big keys, and we work with the Teachers Association on this, the feeling that they wanted to be out that first week of June, and that we'd be able to do that. You see, we start with, in that third week of August with two PD days, one teacher setup day, so quite honestly, moving forward, I can envision the calendar looking a lot different, especially if we get these PLCs and these literacy teams going, because that's going to take time to do that, and whether we carve time out during the day or we do get creative with some scheduling with that. And Mr. Young had a real aggressive PD schedule for next year that I already worked my way this far through the calendar, so I kind of kiboshed it. So you can see he's gotten over it. But we need to work in unison to make sure we shore that up a little bit. Don Schwarzer, our new second shift custodian, we won't miss him. He's about 6'4", 6'5". Comes to us, Darius Gibson. Darius knew him, interviewed with him. He's got a carpentry background. He's excited about coming to work at Cuyahoga Heights. So we're excited to bring Don on. That means we're only one down now in our maintenance staff, and they've really been put to the test. But this will then allow us to move Darius over to the elementary building today and maybe get some things during the daytime short up here a little bit. But Don's excited to come on board. The agreement with Jamise, we talked about that previously. The rental for the costume, sound, and music, they're in there setting the stage up right now. I bring in old paint from home because they're trying to paint a backdrop, so getting all that stuff going, it's incredible because they really do piece that together. Like I said, there's probably 40 kids involved in the play right now, and they're that April 8th and 9th is when the play kicks off. We're going to start advertising that in Tom Talks, but just real excited. Mr. Michaels is excited about that. Stipend for Darius Gibson, that's part of the Chase contract where he'll kind of mentor Don and get him up and going here as we get ready for the home stretch of school here.
Very good. There's no other discussion. Let's move to a vote then, please.
Mrs. Schuker,
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins,
Aye.
Ms. Prowse,
Aye.
Mrs. Etter,
Aye.
Mr. Strachey.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. We're moving on to agenda item 10. Mr. Evans, agenda item 11, discussion comments?
Just a couple things. I wanted to bring it should be getting in mailboxes any day now, the winter newsletter. Looked outstanding. Tracy just called today and said it's out in the mail, so today or tomorrow I wanted to bring a sample down for the board to see. I left it on I was so excited with our new potential new hire. I forgot to bring them down for you. But that looks really neat. That should be out in our community members' hands before too long. The communications team has done a fantastic job. A lot of really kind of neat things. Some of the legislative stuff, I was teasing Mr. Dobbins, 327 is reared its ugly head, quite honestly. That's the critical race bill. It had been set dormant. They hadn't had any discussions about it for almost since before Christmas, and somebody in committee started stirring that pot a little bit. Along with the backpack bill, both very, very negative bills education-wise. So I know that all the professional organizations are starting to gear up on that. The good news was on 126, the one that David Seed talked to us about, that the House did not concur with the Senate's changes. That's going to go back to a committee. The belief is that that's going to move back towards what the House's original proposal was, and going to take out some of those things that the Senate pushed in on. That committee will now be made up, and it's a kind of a 2-in-1 mix, 2 from the majority, 1 from the minority, House and Senate as they work toward that. So kind of pushing towards I think Representative Robinson from Solon looks to be a part of that. That'll be good for education-wise. He's been pretty good with us. So just have to keep our eye on that. The feeling is it's going to move back to where it was originally, and they're going to kind of carve out the Senate's changes to it. So that's a sigh of relief there. But and Matt and I went 2 weeks ago down to Drexel High School to hear the talk of the fair funding. You know, we're in the first budget with the fair funding. The fair funding was passed into law. There's some feelings out there that it was passed because next time around it's not going to be part of the budget bill, so that they'll take it out of law. So we know that there was a 6-year plan to implement the fair funding legislation. Representatives Cupp and Patterson both term limit out. So the two sponsors, which was bipartisan, will be out of office next time that comes up in the budget. So the organizations, the treasurers' organizations, the superintendent's organizations, trying to get some momentum now to say what that looks like. Some really lively conversation, some good questions about what that looks like moving forward. We know that there's a 6-year phase into that. We know that we were not huge beneficiaries of that in the end, but overall that was good for education. So a lot of talk about defining what it looks like. We really kind of came to know that some of the schools, the Appalachian schools in Ohio, got devastated by it, so they got hurt by it, and that was not the intent. So there's still some things to work out with that need to be worked out before the next time the budget bill comes up. So interesting to see how that plays out. Tom Hostler was one of the representatives from the Superintendent's Association, and I saw the list of 27 candidates for the state superintendent's position, and Tom's name was on that list. So, Tom's done a great job of leading through this fair funding plan, but I'd hate to lose him. But if he goes to the state superintendent's role, hopefully that'll be a feather in our cap to maybe do some things the right way. So, just some stuff stirring around, nothing getting finalized right now, but just need to keep an eye on it, because again, like I said, 327 came up out of nowhere. When we talked a week ago with the Alliance and with BASA, there was no movement on it at all, and a couple senators decided they were going to stir the pot a little bit, and it's back on the forefront. So,
Thank you for your summary, appreciate it. Item number 12, Board Policy and Bylaws Review. Mr. Evans or Mr. Young?
Mr. Young?
All right, here we go. These all are in the financial portion of board policy, so Mr. Muccio was quite instrumental in helping us through this. Policy 6110, grant funds. It says revised. It's revised by Neola, but it's actually a new policy for Cuyahoga Heights, and I've got to be honest, I'm surprised we didn't have the grant funds policy, because it explicitly tells you what you can and cannot use federal funds for, and I think that's an important piece to have. Hopefully at the end of this month we'll have this policy, but this policy includes the latest changes to the Education Department General Administrative Regulations, known as EDGAR. There are specific requirements for maintenance of effort. That's something Mr. Muccio sat down with Mr. Burek and myself and explained very well yesterday for about an hour. To talk about what those implications are should you not meet maintenance of effort, especially with special education. He showed us two different ways that we need to look at maintenance of effort. And then there's maintenance of equity. Now, we don't qualify for maintenance of equity requirements because we are under 1,000 students in our school district. So we are fortunate to not to have, while we provide equitable access, this has to do with the way you use funds in a school and equity. So all of those will need to be documented and provided at the time of audit, specified for specific fund programs, especially ESSER. And Mr. Muccio has spoken over and over and over again about ESSER funds will be the largest audited set of federal funds in the history of the country, and he's already seeing that. And this policy just tightens all of that up for us. So it's recommended that we adopt this policy so that we have accurate guidelines for grant funds in general. Policies 6114, the cost principles, spending federal funds. This is a revised policy that we actually adopted back last fall, November 17th of 2021. And then policy 6325, procurement of federal grant funds, that was revised back November 18th of 2020. Again, modifications that have come about because of a lot of the federal funding, the ESSER funding that's come out, but these policies have also been revised to include the latest changes to the Education Department General Administrative Regulations. There are specific prohibitions regarding costs incurred for telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment, along with what's called the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage provisions for contracts in excess of $2,000 related to construction, alteration, repairs, etc. We actually, when we were in a meeting with Gardner last month and we were talking about using our ESSER funds for the air conditioning units across the way, they actually mentioned in their report the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage provisions. So it's something that is out there and has been built into these two policies. So it's recommended to adopt these to maintain current policies and guidelines related to cost principles and procurement of federal grant funds. Finally, we have policy 6423, the use of credit cards, a revised policy that we had actually revised and adopted back on June 23rd of 2021. This policy has been revised to comply with the auditor of state requirement to include the procedure for credit card issuance, credit card reissuance, and credit card cancellations. So that revision is recommended to be adopted to maintain current policies. So those are the only 4 policies for first reading. The only other policy we have from this year that may come up before the end of this year, unless Neola sends us an update, is the school-sponsored publications and productions, policy 5722. It's not part of tonight. I shared it with Mr. Evans. He said he was going to share that with John Britton to get some guidance on, because there's 4 options that you can pick there, and we really want to make sure that we are in line with what John knows would be kind of our best plan of action. So this may be the last set of policies we reviewed this year, but if not, there's only one more to go after that. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 13, board discussion, community comments, reports, comments. Does anyone have any reports this evening?
Sure, I'm still working on the finance committee,
Okay.
setting a date. Did anyone call and say they want to join it? Okay. Still looking for people, I think, to come and join. I don't know, other than
Mascot,
that.
can I update on mascot, Lindy?
Yeah, absolutely. You do
Okay, so
it.
the mascot is-
I don't even know where I'm at. I don't even know where it's at.
Okay, the video's been recorded. Sean Decca and Holden Taylor recorded the video. The plan was we were going to try to do it early next week, but we forgot that the 8th graders in DC, so we want everybody in the district. So we're going to show the video next Friday, because the 8th graders will be back. We'll show it in convocation, middle school, high school. I'm going to show it in each of the classrooms in the elementary, but I'm going to talk to the elementary teachers on their Wednesday staff meeting about the voting process. And then every student will use their email address, and there's going to be 2 questions on the survey. Hawks or Wolves? They can choose between those 2, and then the second question is, do we put red before it, yes or no? So we'll give all 850 students the opportunity to vote on that. The following Tuesday, we're planning on doing a reveal. We'll have a whole school assembly down in the gymnasium. The administrative team was getting a little carried away. We were going to do the college hat thing with the hats as the choice was. We talked about I'd have a tearaway T-shirt with the mascot underneath it. We'll have the band playing, the cheerleaders. We're going to invite the committee members back. So we want to make it a big deal. And have all the
When
students
do you want
there.
to do that?
Next Tuesday, because then the next Wednesday, a week from Tuesday, yeah. Then because then that Wednesday it'll come to the board for approval
Gotcha.
at the next night for official approval by the board. So
Okay.
So the Tuesday before our next board meeting.
correct.
So I understand that you and Mr. Muccio and others are going to be meeting more regularly on this capital improvements project, and will have more information for us. But I guess this question about what levels of community participation and what vehicles might be called upon seemingly is back in the mix again. You know, we're going to try and do things through finance committee or best committee or some other ad hoc committee. I didn't know if you had any.
The hope is the best, that we can get this to the place where we were close to last time, where we've updated with the things that have been done, with what the priorities were, and then get a group down there and do something very, very similar. Say, these were the priorities, these are now the dollar signs that are attached to those priorities, and then break people into small groups and then have them come back and let's see if we can do a kind of a group prioritization of those items. Because the important part of that is finding out what that price tag is going to be, and because then that drives from there. And maybe, I think that there's some people that Mr. Podol started to. He was an engineer in the service. He's got a real deep engineering background, so I think there's some people that want to kind of jump on board to see what some of the nuts and bolts of this are going to be right now. And I think that we're at a place where that's kind of a next step for us, what that looks like.
Great.
And Laura Garrett's calling me every day because she's ready to go. And I said, Laura, you gotta let us get caught up a little bit. I know you want to go, Laura, but Matt and I need to get something, our ducks in a row here before we turn it back loose to the best committee. So.
Good, very good, thank you. Those are the only comments or questions that I had this evening, so I'll pass it on to the ladies. Maria, do you have?
My next. So I just wanted to say that I just came from the Valley View Economic Development Grant Committee meeting, where I sit as the school board liaison for that organization. And there was some action taken by this committee today. This involves the economic development initiatives that the village has. Right now, right now they're issuing grants to 6 different companies, and tonight they added another. JBK Group, which is Event Source, Safeguard Properties, Exact Care Pharmacy, Train USA Incorporated, Kaplan Trucking, and Precision Metal Products. In these grant initiatives, these are incentive grants that they work with different companies to encourage them to either come to the village and, set up their companies in Valley View, or to expand their companies. And it involves a percentage of a rebate that they get based on their income tax. So for example, the percentage would be between 25 and 40% of a rebate portion of the 2% income tax, the RETA tax that's paid. So we're talking about income tax, we're not talking about property tax. So it doesn't affect the schools by loss of any money. This is the village that rebates these companies. And in fact, they said that most times these companies will then take that rebate and pump it back into their companies for either for expansion or for increase labor or expansion. So the next result would be actually a benefit to the schools, which might involve increased property tax where we would benefit. So today, the action that was taken was whether or not to extend the 4-year grant to Exact Care. And they've had this grant twice already, so this will be the 3rd time. Exact Care is a company that is in the former Gould building at the corner of Canal and Rockside. And they occupy 2 floors of that building right now, and they're thinking about maybe occupying a 3rd by adding more staff. So they are also the 2nd highest payroll in Valley View. This year they're going to be issued a rebate of $180,700. And the group decided to extend this 4-year grant to them. So they felt that this was a good move because they are growing and they do want to stay in Valley View. And the vote was 6-0 for that. And then another vote was taken on another company. This is R.L. Lipton. And this is a distribution company. They're on 9797 Sweet Valley. I guess this company is a distribution of wines, coolers, seltzers, and beverages
So
like
the beer
that.
distributor, Lipton was a beer distributor for a long
Yeah,
time.
I guess
Oldies.
beer was the #1, but now
Yeah.
they're more into these other beverages. And they are looking for, this distribution company is looking to add equipment, a cooler, and an addition to the building. They are presently, what did they say? Okay, so they bring a $4.7 million payroll, and they're looking to hire more people and maybe add a small addition to the building right now. So they want to make it so their trucks can drive in and drive out of the building for drive in, get stocked, and drive out. So that's what they're talking about doing. Again, this would be a 35% return on the 2% income tax, and this would be for 4 years. And that was approved by the group as well, a 5-0 vote with one abstaining, since this one person on the group was also part of, he was the broker for them to buy the property, so he could not vote on this. But they were very excited about this. It's already a 127,000 square foot building, and they're looking to maybe add about $6 million in improvements into the building. And that was all, it sounded to be all very, very good news, and the committee was very optimistic that this would, adding this new company, giving this economic incentive grant to them would in the long run actually pay off more in that. Again, it's money that the Village of Valley View rebates back to them from the income tax that's collected, and it does not affect the school directly in any lost property taxes or anything like that. So they're very clear about that. And again, they feel like these companies are very vested in the community. They're showing their expansion and looking to hire, and all good signs of economic development that the village would be very excited about to have. And that was that. And it was very interesting with a good group of people. And then I just wanted to add in congratulations to all our great athletes, Lexa Trousseau and Tessa.
Hannah.
Did I say? Oh, I said Alexis wrong. It's Jenna. Jenna?
Hannah.
Hannah. And Tessa, and of course Luke Turkeson, who I remember when the child was born, so. And I just want to say congratulations to Coach Mike Tartera, too, for being named Coach of the Year in our division here.
Thank you. Thank you for serving as the liaison for the board to the Economic Development Committee in Dogview. It's important to get that feedback and update us how things are going in Dogview.
Absolutely. I was glad to be there.
Thank you. Mrs. Prowse, do you have anything for us tonight?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, with that then, let's move on to 14, any future agenda items. I think we've kind of done some prospective look forwards about a number of different things, so I think that those items will show up on the next agendas. Number 15, 15A, it should be noted the Board of Education members received their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting, thus they have had considerable opportunity to study it, ask questions, etc. Item 15, let's see, upcoming meetings. Upcoming meetings, regular meeting 7 p.m., March 23rd, 2022. A work session, April 6th, 6 p.m. start, 2022. Regular meeting, April 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m. And a work session, May 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Schubert moves. I'll second. I don't think there's anything to discuss, so let's move to a vote, please.
Mrs. Schubert.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter.
Aye.
The motion passes 4-0, 1 absent. Thank you.